the master of the human psyche, uncovered why people intentionally hurt you. And it's not just because they dislike you, it's because their shadow, the dark, hidden part of their soul, has declared war on your spirit. In this video, we're diving deep into Carl Jung's shocking truth, the 5 signs someone is deliberately trying to break you, and how you can rise above it with unshakable strength. Stay with us, because by the end, you'll never look at betrayal the same way again. What's the one thing that drives someone to hurt you on purpose? Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, pointed to something chilling: the shadow. This isn't just a fancy term, it's the hidden part of every human psyche. The dark corner where we shove our insecurities, fears, and unacknowledged desires. And when that shadow takes the wheel, it doesn't just act recklessly. It schemes, it calculates, it destroys. In this chapter, we're peeling back the layers of Carl Jung's shadow to uncover why some people don't just dislike you, they devalue you. And it all starts with a dangerous psychological state Carl Jung called contempt. Let's break it down. According to Carl Jung, the shadow is like the backstage of your mind. It's where you hide the parts of yourself you don't want to face: jealousy, anger, shame. Everyone has a shadow, but not everyone lets it run the show. Carl Jung discovered that when someone intentionally hurts you, it's not just a fleeting moment of weakness. It's their shadow making a deliberate choice. And the fuel for that choice, contempt. Carl Jung described contempt as a psychological poison, far more dangerous than anger or frustration. Why? Because contempt doesn't just push people away, it strips them of their humanity. Imagine this. You're at work, pouring your heart into a project. You've stayed late, triple-checked every detail, and you're proud of what you've built. Then, a colleague, someone you thought was a friend, takes credit for your work in a meeting. When you confront them, they smirk and say, "Oh, it's not a big deal. You're overreacting." That smirk, that dismissal, it's not just rudeness, it's contempt. Carl Jung would say, this person has gone through what he called the devaluation process. In their mind, you're no longer a colleague, a friend, or even a person with feelings. You're an obstacle, an object, someone who deserves to be diminished. Here's where it gets unsettling. Carl Jung observed that contempt isn't always loud or obvious. It doesn't always look like a screaming match or a public betrayal. Sometimes, it's subtle: a cold glance, a backhanded compliment, or a deliberate silence when you need support. Think about a time someone gave you a compliment that felt like a jab. Wow, you actually did a good job for once. That's contempt, wearing a mask. And according to Carl Jung, it's the shadow's favorite disguise. Why? Because it lets the person hurt you while keeping their hands clean. Let's ground this in a real-life story to make it hit home. Meet Sarah, a graphic designer who joined a tight-knit creative team. She was excited to collaborate, share ideas, and grow. But one teammate, Mike, always seemed to undermine her. At first, it was small things interrupting her in meetings, forgetting to include her in emails. Then, it escalated. During a big client pitch, Mike presented Sarah's design as his own. When she called him out privately, he laughed it off. "You're too sensitive." "Sarah, it's just business." That wasn't just a betrayal, it was contempt in action. Mike's shadow had devalued Sarah, reducing her from a talented colleague to someone who didn't deserve credit. So why does this happen? Carl Jung's answer is both profound and chilling. The shadow doesn't act alone. It builds a narrative to justify its actions. In Mike's mind, Sarah wasn't a threat because of her talent. She was too emotional. Not a team player. Or overrated. These aren't random thoughts. They're psychological weapons, crafted to make Mike feel okay about hurting her. Carl Jung called this the devaluation process, where the shadow convinces itself that you deserve to be hurt. They're weak. It whispers. They brought this on themselves. Sound familiar? Maybe you've heard those excuses from someone who betrayed you. Or maybe you've caught yourself thinking them about someone else. Here's the kicker. Contempt doesn't just hurt you in the moment. It lingers. It plants seeds of doubt in your mind, making you question your worth. Did I overreact? Am I too sensitive? Carl Jung warned that this is exactly what the shadow wants to destabilize you emotionally, while the person who hurt you walks away unscathed. But here's the good news. Understanding the shadow and contempt gives you power. When you recognize that someone's actions come from their own unresolved darkness, you can stop internalizing their poison. So, what's the lesson here? Contempt isn't about you, it's about them. Their shadow is projecting its own insecurities, fears, or shame onto you. When someone tries to devalue you, they're not seeing you clearly. They're wrestling with their own demons. Carl Jung's wisdom teaches us to step back and see the bigger picture. That colleague who stole your credit, they're not just being mean, they're fighting a battle within themselves. That friend who dismisses your feelings, their shadow, is calling the shots. Recognizing this doesn't erase the pain, but it frees you from carrying their baggage. Before we move to the next chapter, let me ask you, have you ever felt someone's contempt, a subtle jab, a dismissive comment, or a betrayal that cut deep? How did it make you feel? Share your thoughts in the comments. We're all here to learn from each other. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how the shadow uses manipulation as a weapon. And trust me, you'll want to know the signs to protect yourself. Stay with us. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling confused, small, or like you're losing your grip on reality? That's not an accident. It's manipulation, the shadow's most cunning weapon. Carl Jung, the genius who mapped the human psyche, warned that when someone sets out to hurt you intentionally, they don't just attack, they study you. They probe your weaknesses, not to understand you, but to control you. In this chapter, we're diving into how the shadow uses manipulation to erode your confidence, distort your reality, and keep you trapped in its game. By the end, you'll know the signs to spot it and how to break free. Let's start with what Carl Jung called shadow projection. The shadow, that dark, hidden part of someone's psyche, doesn't just lash out blindly. It's strategic. Carl Jung observed that manipulators use shadow projection to offload their own insecurities onto you. They see something in you, your kindness, your success, your vulnerability, and their shadow twists it into a target. Instead of facing their own flaws, they project them onto you, making you feel like you're the problem. It's like they're holding a warped mirror, reflecting their darkness back at you while convincing you it's your fault. Manipulation doesn't always look like a villain twirling a mustache. Carl Jung pointed out that it often hides behind subtle, calculated behaviors, passive aggression, false concern, or strategic silence. Ever had someone say, "I'm just worried about you," but their tone makes you feel judged? Or maybe they give you the silent treatment, leaving you scrambling to figure out what you did wrong. These aren't random acts. They're deliberate moves to destabilize you. Carl Jung called this instrumental thinking, treating you not as a person with feelings, but as an object to be controlled. Let's make this real with a story. Meet Alex, a young professional who moved to a new city for a dream job. He befriended Lisa, a charismatic co-worker who seemed supportive at first, She'd ask about his goals, listen intently, and offer advice. But soon, things shifted. Lisa started making subtle digs. "Oh, Alex, you're so ambitious. It's cute. But don't burn out." She'd forget to pass along critical project updates, leaving Alex scrambling. When he asked her about it, she'd smile and say, "I thought you had it under control." My bad over time. Alex started doubting his competence. Was he really messing up? Was Lisa just trying to help? That's manipulation at work. Lisa's shadow was testing Alex's boundaries, eroding his confidence while she played the role of a concerned friend. Here's the chilling part. Carl Jung discovered that manipulation follows a predictable pattern. It starts small, with tiny distortions of reality like Lisa's forgetfulness. If you don't push back, the manipulator digs deeper. They might gaslight you, making you question your memory or feelings. "I never said that." They'll insist, even when you know they did. Or they'll shower you with fake concern to keep you off balance. Carl Jung warned that this isn't accidental. It's a calculated escalation. The shadow wants to chip away at your sense of self until you're questioning your own reality. Why is this so effective? Because manipulators don't just lie, they study you. Carl Jung noted that they observe your vulnerabilities like a predator sizing up its prey. If you're someone who values trust, they'll betray you in small ways to test your limits. If you're sensitive to criticism, they'll drop subtle insults, disguised as jokes. This is what Carl Jung called weaponizing your psychology. They use your strengths and insecurities against you, turning your own mind into their battlefield. And the worst part, you might not even realize it's happening until you're drowning in self-doubt. Let's pause for a second. Think about someone in your life, a friend, a partner, a co-worker. Have you ever felt like they were pulling your strings, making you second-guess yourself? Maybe they made a comment that left you reeling, but when you brought it up, they acted like you were overreacting. That's the shadow at work, and recognizing it is the first step to breaking free. So, what's the lesson here? The key to protecting yourself is to spot the signs early. Carl Jung's wisdom gives us a roadmap. Manipulation thrives in ambiguity. So clarity is your shield. Start by trusting your gut. If something feels off in a conversation, don't ignore it. Pay attention to patterns, those small slights, like Lisa's forgetfulness. Add up. Set firm boundaries. If someone crosses them, call it out calmly, but directly. For example, Alex could have said, "Lisa, I noticed you didn't include me in the project update. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again." That kind of response, what Carl Jung called a conscious response, stops the shadow in its tracks. It shows you're not an object to be controlled. You're a person who sees through the game. Manipulation is the shadow's way of keeping you small. But you don't have to play along. By recognizing the tactics: passive aggression, false concern, strategic silence, you take back your power. And here's the best part. Every time you call out manipulation, you're not just protecting yourself, you're shining a light on the shadow, forcing it to retreat. Before we move to the next chapter, let me ask you, have you ever dealt with someone whose words or actions left you questioning yourself? What was it like? Share your story in the comments. It might help someone else spot the signs. Up next, we'll explore how the shadow targets what you love most. Your core complexes, to inflict maximum damage. You won't want to miss this. What hurts more than betrayal? When someone you trust takes aim at the very things that define you, your values, your passions, your identity. Carl Jung, the visionary who decoded the human psyche, discovered that when someone intends to harm you, they don't strike randomly. They go straight for what Carl Jung called your core complexes, the psychological pillars that give your life meaning. In this chapter, we're uncovering why the shadow targets what you love most, how it inflicts maximum damage, and how you can protect the heart of who you are. By the end, you'll see betrayal in a whole new light and know exactly how to shield your spirit. So, what are core complexes? According to Carl Jung, these are the deeply rooted beliefs and values that shape your sense of self. They're the things you hold sacred: loyalty, honesty, family, creativity, or your reputation. They're the foundation of your identity. The reasons you get out of bed in the morning. Carl Jung observed that the shadow, that dark and calculating part of someone's psyche, is eerily precise. It doesn't waste energy on trivial attacks. Instead, it zeroes in on these core complexes because it knows that's where it can inflict the deepest wounds. Why? Because when someone shakes your foundation, the pain isn't just emotional, it's existential. It makes you question who you are. Let's paint a picture. Imagine you're someone who values loyalty above all else. You pride yourself on being there for others, keeping your word, and building trust. Now, picture a close friend who knows this about you. They don't just let you down. They betray you in a way that cuts straight to that value. Maybe they share a secret you entrusted them with, or they side with someone who's hurt you. That betrayal stings not because it happened, but because it targets the core of what makes you you. Carl Jung called this privileged destruction, when someone uses their intimate knowledge of your values as ammunition to unravel you. To make this hit home, let's dive into a real-life story. Meet Emily, a teacher who poured her heart into her students. Her core complex was her sense of purpose. She believed in inspiring young minds and building a legacy through education. Her colleague, David, seemed to admire her passion at first. He'd ask about her teaching methods, praise her dedication, and even call her the heart of the school. But behind the scenes, David was spreading rumors. He told the principal that Emily was overly emotional and unprofessional, questioning her ability to handle tough students. When Emily found out, she was crushed. It wasn't just the lies, it was that David attacked her purpose, the thing that gave her life meaning. She started doubting her teaching, wondering if she was truly making a difference. That's the shadow at work, surgically targeting her core complex to maximize devastation. Why do people do this? Carl Jung's insight is chilling. The shadow thrives on control, and nothing gives it more power than dismantling what you cherish. When someone knows you intimately, your dreams, your fears, your values, they have a roadmap to your soul. Carl Jung noted that this kind of attack often comes from those closest to you, because only they have the access to strike with precision. A stranger might hurt your feelings, but a loved one can unravel your identity. If you value honesty, they lie convincingly. If you cherish your reputation, they smear it systematically. If you treasure family, they sow division. The shadow doesn't just want to hurt you, it wants to break you. Here's where it gets even more unsettling. Carl Jung discovered that these attacks aren't impulsive. They're calculated. The person hurting you has often observed you for a long time, cataloging your strengths and vulnerabilities. They know exactly what will hit hardest. In Emily's case, David didn't just spread random gossip. He targeted her passion for teaching because he knew it was her lifeline. Carl Jung called this the shadow's emotional precision, a kind of psychological warfare that exploits your deepest values to leave you reeling. But it's not just about the attack itself. Carl Jung warned that the shadow often follows up with a second blow, making you feel like you deserved it. After David's rumors, Emily overheard him say to a colleague, "She's too sensitive for this job. She needs to toughen up." That comment wasn't just cruel, it was designed to make Emily question herself. Maybe I am too emotional. She thought, maybe I'm not cut out for this. This is what Carl Jung called the shadow's attempt to destabilize your core complexes, planting seeds of doubt that erode your confidence from the inside out. Let's take a moment to reflect. Have you ever had someone attack something you hold dear? Your work? Your relationships? Your integrity? How did it feel to have your core values targeted? Maybe it was a partner who mocked your dreams, or a friend who betrayed your trust in a way that felt personal. That pain is real, and Carl Jung's wisdom helps us understand why it cuts so deep. So, what's the lesson here? Your core complexes are your strength, but they're also your vulnerability. The shadow knows this, which is why it targets them. But Carl Jung's insight gives you a way to fight back, protect your values by recognizing their worth. Start by naming your core complexes. What matters most to you? Is it your creativity, your loyalty, your sense of purpose? Write them down. Own them. And remind yourself they're yours to define, not someone else's to attack. When Emily realized David's rumors were about his own insecurities, not her teaching, she took back her power. She focused on her students' progress, sought feedback from trusted colleagues, and rebuilt her confidence. That's what Carl Jung would call a conscious response, refusing to let the shadow rewrite your story. The second lesson is to limit access. Carl Jung emphasized that privileged destruction requires intimate knowledge. Be mindful of who you share your deepest values with. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your soul. If someone starts poking at your core complexes with subtle jabs or betrayals, set boundaries early. For example, Emily could have confronted David calmly. I've heard you've been questioning my professionalism. Let's talk about this directly with the principal. That kind of response stops the shadow from gaining ground. Finally, trust your instincts. If someone's actions feel like they're targeting what you love most, they probably are. Don't dismiss that gut feeling. It's your psyche's way of sounding the alarm. By recognizing the attack for what it is, you can protect your core complexes and keep your identity intact. Before we move to the next chapter, I want to hear from you. Has someone ever attacked something you hold dear? Your passion, your values, your identity. How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments. It might inspire someone else to protect their core. Up next, we'll dive into gaslighting, the shadow's sneakiest trick to make you doubt your own reality. You won't want to miss this. Have you ever been told you're too sensitive or making things up when you know something's wrong? That sinking feeling when someone twists your reality, leaving you doubting your own memory or emotions. It's not just confusion, it's gaslighting. The shadow's sneakiest weapon. Carl Jung, the master of the human psyche, warned that when someone intentionally harms you, they don't just stop at the act. They wage a psychological war to make you question your own sanity. In this chapter, we're diving deep into gaslighting, what it is, how it works, and how you can break free from its grip. By the end, you'll have the tools to trust your truth and reclaim your power. So, what exactly is gaslighting? Carl Jung didn't use the term directly, but he described it perfectly when he talked about reality manipulation. Gaslighting is when someone deliberately distorts your perception of reality to control you. It's not just lying, it's a calculated effort to make you doubt what you know to be true. According to Carl Jung, gaslighting is the shadow's ultimate power play, because it doesn't just hurt you, it makes you feel guilty for noticing the hurt. The person gaslighting you wants you to question your instincts, your memories, even your worth, so they can maintain dominance while keeping their hands clean. Let's break down how it works. Gaslighting starts subtly, often with small denials or dismissals. I didn't say that. They'll insist, even when you're sure they did, or they'll downplay their actions. You're blowing this out of proportion. Over time, these little distortions pile up, creating a fog of doubt. Carl Jung observed that this is the shadow's way of destabilizing you emotionally. By making you question your reality, the gaslighter shifts the blame onto you. Suddenly, you're not the victim of their betrayal. You're the one who's too emotional or paranoid. It's a psychological sleight of hand, designed to keep you off balance. To make this crystal clear, let's dive into a story. Meet Marcus, a graphic designer who started dating Jenna, someone he thought was his soulmate. At first, Jenna was charming, attentive, and seemed to adore him. But as their relationship grew, Marcus noticed odd patterns. Jenna would make plans and then cancel at the last minute, claiming Marcus misunderstood the arrangements. When he brought up her hurtful comments like calling his artwork amateurish in front of friends, she'd laugh and say, "You're so sensitive." "Marcus, I was just joking." One night, after Jenna stood him up for a date, Marcus confronted her. "I never confirmed we were meeting," she said, even though Marcus had a text proving otherwise. Slowly, Marcus started doubting himself. Was he misreading things? Was he too needy? That's gaslighting in action. Jenna's shadow was rewriting reality to keep Marcus second-guessing his own truth. Here's what makes gaslighting so insidious. It exploits your trust. Carl Jung noted that the shadow thrives in relationships where there's emotional intimacy, because that's where gaslighting does the most damage. When someone you care about, whether it's a partner, friend, or family member, starts twisting your reality, you're more likely to believe them. Why? Because you trust them to have your best interests at heart. But the shadow has no such loyalty. Carl Jung called this a double victory. First, the gaslighter hurts you with their actions, then they make you feel like you're the problem for noticing. It's like they stab you and then convince you the wound is your fault. Let's get specific about the signs. Gaslighting often shows up in phrases like, "You're overreacting," "That never happened," or "You're imagining things." These aren't just words, they're weapons. Carl Jung would say they're the shadow's attempt to erode your confidence in your own psyche. Another tactic is trivializing your feelings. "Why are you so upset? It's not a big deal." Over time, these comments create what Carl Jung described as an invisible leash. You start holding back your anger, hesitating to speak up, wondering if you're the one who's wrong. The gaslighter's goal is to keep you emotionally destabilized, so you're too confused to challenge them. But here's the kicker. Gaslighting isn't just about control, it's about protecting the gaslighter's ego. Carl Jung observed that the shadow can't handle being exposed. When you call out someone's harmful behavior, their shadow scrambles to deflect blame. By making you doubt yourself, they avoid facing their own flaws. In Marcus's case, Jenna's gaslighting wasn't just about controlling him, it was about avoiding accountability for her hurtful actions. Every time she said, "You're too sensitive," she was shielding her shadow from scrutiny. Let's pause and reflect. Have you ever been gaslit? Maybe someone made you feel like your emotions weren't valid, or they denied something you know happened. How did it affect you? It's a heavy question, but recognizing these moments is the first step to breaking free. Share your thoughts in the comments. It could help someone else see they're not alone. So, what's the lesson here? Carl Jung's wisdom gives us a roadmap to combat gaslighting. Trust your truth. First, anchor yourself in reality. If something feels off, it probably is. Keep a record of events, texts, emails, or even a journal to confirm what you know is true. Marcus, for example, could have saved Jenna's texts to remind himself he wasn't misunderstanding anything. Second, validate your emotions. Your feelings are real. and no one gets to tell you they're too much. If someone dismisses your pain, that's a red flag, not a reflection of your worth. Third, set clear boundaries. Carl Jung's concept of a conscious response is your shield here. When someone gaslights you, respond with calm clarity. For instance, Marcus could have said, "Jenna, I have a text showing we confirmed the date. Let's talk about why this keeps happening." This kind of response disrupts the shadows game. It shows you're not buying the distortion. Finally, seek support. Talk to a trusted friend or therapist who can affirm your reality. Gaslighting thrives in isolation, so connecting with others helps you stay grounded. The beauty of Carl Jung's insight is that it empowers you to reclaim your psyche. Gaslighting wants you to feel small, but you're not. You have the power to trust your instincts, hold your ground, and refuse to let someone else rewrite your story. By shining a light on the shadow's tactics, you take away its control. Before we head to the next chapter, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been made to doubt your reality? What was it like? And how did you find your way out? Drop your story in the comments. It might inspire someone else to break free. Up next, we'll explore how to heal from these wounds and why your recovery is the ultimate rebellion against the shadow. Stay with us. What's the one thing that terrifies someone who's tried to break you? Your healing. Carl Jung, the brilliant mind who unraveled the human psyche, discovered that when you rise from the ashes of betrayal, you don't just recover, you rebel. The shadow, that dark force, driving someone's intent to harm you, thrives on keeping you broken. But when you heal, you shatter its narrative. In this final chapter, we're exploring why your recovery is the ultimate act of defiance, how the shadow tries to sabotage it, and how you can reclaim your power with what Carl Jung called a conscious response. By the end, you'll see that healing isn't just about moving on, it's about winning the war against the shadow. Let's start with why healing is so powerful. Carl Jung observed that when someone intentionally hurts you through contempt, manipulation, or gaslighting, they're not just attacking you in the moment. They want to keep you wounded. Why? Because your pain reinforces their story. The shadow builds a narrative that you're weak, unworthy, or deserving of their cruelty. But when you start to heal, when you rebuild your confidence, rediscover your worth, or reclaim your joy, you disrupt that narrative. Carl Jung called this a threat to the shadow. Your recovery proves their attack failed. And nothing unsettles the shadow more than losing control. Here's the catch. The shadow doesn't give up easily. Carl Jung warned that people driven by their shadow often reappear when you start healing, disguised as concern or reconciliation. Picture this. Someone who betrayed you suddenly reaches out, saying, "I miss you," or "I'm sorry. Let's move past this." It feels genuine, but Carl Jung cautioned that these are often strategic moves to reopen old wounds. The shadow doesn't want peace, it wants dominance. By pulling you back into their orbit, they aim to keep you tethered to the pain they caused. This is why healing isn't just about time, it's about vigilance. Let's ground this in a story to make it real. Meet Rachel, a small business owner who trusted her best friend, Claire, as her business partner. Rachel's core complex was her entrepreneurial spirit. She poured her heart into building her company. But Claire betrayed her, secretly funneling clients to a competitor. When Rachel confronted her, Claire gaslit her, saying, "You're paranoid." "Rachel, I'd never do that." The betrayal crushed Rachel's confidence, and she considered closing her business. But slowly, she started healing. She sought therapy, reconnected with supportive clients, and rebuilt her vision. Just as Rachel was regaining her spark, Claire texted her, "I feel terrible about our fight. Can we grab coffee and start over?" It sounded sincere. But Rachel sensed something off. Thanks to her understanding of Carl Jung's teachings, she recognized this as the shadow's attempt to derail her recovery. Instead of engaging, Rachel politely declined and focused on her growth. That was her rebellion. Why does the shadow circle back? Carl Jung's insight is profound. Hatred thrives on control, and your healing is the ultimate act of defiance. When you rebuild your life, you're not just moving on, you're proving the shadow wrong. Rachel's success wasn't just a business win, it was a psychological victory. Her healing showed Claire's shadow that it no longer had power over her. Carl Jung noted that this kind of recovery threatens the shadow's ego, because it forces the person who hurt you to face their own darkness, and they'll do anything to avoid that. So, how do you heal in a way that shuts down the shadow? Carl Jung's answer lies in what he called a conscious response. Unlike revenge, which feeds the shadow's cycle of destruction, a conscious response is rooted in clarity, truth, and self-awareness. It's about choosing actions that align with your values, not reacting out of pain. For Rachel, this meant focusing on her business and surrounding herself with people who uplifted her, rather than getting sucked into Claire's drama. Carl Jung believed that this kind of response doesn't just protect you, it exposes the shadow's weakness. Truth, he said, is harder to argue with than anger. It lingers, it reveals, and it lets you walk away with your integrity intact. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever started healing from a betrayal, only to have the person who hurt you try to pull you back? Maybe they apologized out of the blue, or acted like nothing happened. How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments, it might inspire someone else to keep healing. So, what's the lesson here? Healing is your superpower, but it takes intention. First, recognize that your recovery is a threat to the shadow. Every step you take toward healing, whether it's seeking therapy, setting boundaries, or rediscovering your passions, chips away at the narrative that you're broken. Second, be wary of the shadow's return. When someone who hurt you reappears, ask yourself, is this genuine, or is it a tactic to pull me back into their control? Trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to say no. Rachel's decision to decline. Claire's coffee invitation wasn't cold, it was a conscious choice to protect her peace. Third, build a support system. Carl Jung emphasized that healing happens in connection. Surround yourself with people who affirm your worth, friends, family, or even a community like this one. They'll remind you of your strength when the shadow tries to sow doubt. Finally, embrace your core complexes. Those values we talked about in Chapter 3, your loyalty, creativity, or purpose, are your anchor. Reclaim them by living them fully. For Rachel, this meant pouring her energy into her business and celebrating every small win. Each step forward was a rebellion against Claire's betrayal. The beauty of Carl Jung's wisdom is that it transforms healing into an act of power. The shadow wants you to stay wounded, but every time you choose to rise, you're rewriting the story. You're not just surviving, you're thriving in a way that the shadow can't touch. And that's the ultimate victory. A silent, unshakable triumph that proves no one can dim your light unless you let them. Before we wrap up in the next section, I want to hear from you. What's one step you've taken to heal from a betrayal? Maybe it's setting a boundary, finding a new passion, or simply choosing to believe in yourself again. Drop it in the comments. Your story could light the way for someone else. Up next, we'll bring everything together and show you how to rise above betrayal with a powerful, Carl Jung-inspired mindset. Stay with us. You've just walked through the shadow's darkest tactics, contempt. manipulation, attacks on your core values, gaslighting. And yet, here you are, still standing. Carl Jung's profound wisdom has shown us that those who try to break you aren't just acting out of dislike. They're driven by their shadow, a force that thrives on control and destruction. But here's the truth Carl Jung left us. With no one can dim your light unless you let them. Your healing, your clarity, your conscious response, these are your weapons in a battle the shadow can't win. In these 30 minutes, we've uncovered the 7 signs someone is intentionally hurting you, and more importantly, how to rise above it with unshakable strength. Let's wrap this up with a story that proves you can triumph, and a call to take your power back. Let's revisit what we've learned. First, we saw how the shadow uses contempt to devalue you, turning you into an object in its narrative. Then, we uncovered manipulation, the shadow's cunning way of exploiting your vulnerabilities. We explored how it targets your core, complexes, your values, your passions to inflict maximum pain. We dug into gaslighting, the psychological warfare that makes you doubt your reality. And finally, we discovered that healing is your ultimate rebellion, a defiant act that proves the shadow's story wrong. Carl Jung's insight is clear: the shadow may strike, but you have the power to respond with truth, reclaim your worth, and rebuild your life stronger than ever. Now, let's close with a story that brings this home. Meet James, a musician whose core complex was his love for creating music. His bandmate, Laura, knew this and used it against him. She criticized his songs, spread rumors that he was difficult to work with, and even convinced the band to replace him for a major gig. James was devastated. His music was his identity, and Laura's betrayal made him question his talent. But James turned to Carl Jung's teachings. He recognized Laura's actions as her shadow's attempt to control him. Instead of giving up, he chose a conscious response. He started writing music again, this time for himself. He shared his songs online, connected with a new community of artists, and slowly rebuilt his confidence. When Laura reached out months later, pretending to apologize, James saw through her. He politely declined her offer to reconnect and kept creating. Today, James's music is thriving, and his story is proof that healing isn't just recovery. It's a victory the shadow can't touch. Here's the challenge for you. You are not defined by the pain others inflict. You are defined by how you rise. Carl Jung's wisdom empowers you to see the shadow for what it is, a reflection of someone else's darkness, not your worth. So, take one step today. Maybe it's setting a boundary with someone who's hurt you. Maybe it's writing down your core values to remind yourself who you are. Or maybe it's choosing to heal by pursuing something you love. Whatever it is, know this: every step you take toward healing is a rebellion against the shadow, a silent triumph that no one can take away. We'd love to hear from you. What's one betrayal you've faced? And how are you rising above it? Share your story in the comments below. Your words could inspire someone else to take back their power. If this video opened your eyes to the shadow's tactics, or gave you the tools to heal, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe to Jung Psyche Hub. Don't forget to ring the bell, so you never miss an insight into your psyche. Together, let's keep shining a light on the shadow and building a community of strength, truth, and healing. As Carl Jung said, your dignity is untouchable, and no betrayal can define your worth. Choose to rise, choose your truth, and let's keep this journey going.